The message arrived at 0600 hours, cutting through every communication channel humanity possessed. Admiral Daehyun was drinking his morning coffee when the screens in Orbital Command Station Alpha went dark, replaced by a towering crystalline figure that seemed to shimmer with internal light. "I am Supreme Arbitrator Kelm of the Galactic Assembly," the being announced in perfect human language. "For 3 cycles, we have observed your species. You have expanded across 12 systems. You have built weapons. You have shown patterns of aggression and unpredictability that threaten galactic peace." Daehyun set down his coffee cup slowly. Around him, technicians froze at their stations. The transmission was reaching every screen on Earth, every colony, every human settlement across the stars. "The Assembly has deliberated," Kelm continued. "Humanity must dismantle all military forces within 72 hours. You will surrender sovereignty to Assembly governance. Your people will relocate to designated containment zones where you will be protected from yourselves and others will be protected from you. This is not negotiable. This is mercy." The transmission ended as abruptly as it began. For 5 seconds, complete silence filled the command center. Then, everyone started talking at once. Daehyun raised his hand and the room quieted. He was 53 years old, gray-haired and weathered from 30 years in space. He had fought pirates, negotiated with alien traders, and built Earth's defense fleet from almost nothing. He had never imagined facing something like this. "Get me Ambassador Hannah," he said quietly. "Get me the Earth Council. Get me every colony governor. We have 72 hours to figure out how humanity responds to this." Across the solar system, panic spread like wildfire. On Earth, crowds gathered in city squares, watching the replay of the transmission on public screens. Some people wept. Others shouted in anger. Governments held emergency sessions. Religious leaders offered prayers. Parents held their children close. In the Mars Research Institute, Dr. Minji watched the transmission for the 7th time, her analytical mind picking apart every detail. She was humanity's leading expert on alien technology, having spent 15 years studying every scrap of information about the 17 species that formed the Galactic Assembly. "They're afraid of us," she murmured to herself. "That's why they're doing this. They're actually afraid." Her assistant looked at her in confusion. "Afraid? They have thousands of ships. They've controlled the galaxy for thousands of years. How could they be afraid of us?" Minji pointed at the screen. "Look at the timeline. 72 hours. If they were truly confident, they would give us days or weeks to comply. They want this done quickly before we can organize, before we can think, before we can respond. They're trying to shock us into submission." Meanwhile, at Earth's capital in Geneva, Ambassador Hannah was already in her 4th straight hour of meetings. She looked exhausted, her eyes red from lack of sleep. For 6 years, she had been humanity's voice in dealings with alien species. She had negotiated trade agreements, resolved disputes, and tried desperately to make the older species of the galaxy see humans as equals rather than dangerous children. It hadn't worked. "We should consider compliance," said one council member, an elderly politician from the Asian Federation. "They have the power to exterminate us. If we resist, millions could die." "Billions," another corrected grimly. "If they decide to make an example of us, they could wipe out entire colonies." Hannah listened to them argue back and forth, feeling a deep weariness in her bones. Finally, she spoke. "I've spent 6 years talking to the Assembly. I've attended their councils, learned their customs, studied their history. I can tell you exactly what happens if we surrender." She paused, making sure everyone was listening. "We cease to exist as a species. Not physically, perhaps, but in every way that matters. They'll separate us, control us, breed the aggression out of us over generations. In 200 years, humans will be docile pets living in cages, and our children won't even remember we were once free. The room fell silent. So what do you propose? Asked the council chairman. Hannah looked at him steadily. We tell them no. We refuse. And we prepare for whatever comes next. The debate raged for 18 hours. Council members argued, shouted, pleaded. Some wanted to fight. Others begged for compromise. A few suggested running, loading colony ships and fleeing beyond known space. Admiral Dae-hyun joined the session via video link from Orbital Command. I won't lie to you, he said when asked for a military assessment. If they bring their full fleet against us, we lose. We have 87 warships. Intelligence suggests they have thousands. Our technology is decades behind theirs. In a straight fight, we'd be destroyed in days, maybe hours. Then, we have no choice but to surrender, someone said. I didn't say that, Dae-hyun replied quietly. I said we'd lose a straight fight. But, humans don't fight straight. We adapt. We improvise. We find ways to win that no one expects. It's what we've always done. Captain Jin-woo, watching from his frigate patrol route near Jupiter, felt his hands tighten on his command chair. He was 29 years old, the youngest frigate captain in the fleet. He had grown up on stories of humanity's first steps into space, of brave explorers and bold pioneers. The idea of surrendering to alien overlords made his stomach turn. Sir, his first officer said quietly, what do you think will happen? Jin-woo stared at the stars beyond his viewport. I think we're about to find out what humans are really made of. On Earth, the vote finally came. The United Council chamber was packed, every member present either in person or via hologram. The chamber president called for the decision. All those in favor of accepting the Assembly's terms and surrendering human sovereignty, signify now. 43% of the council voted yes. All those opposed, signifying a rejection of the Assembly's demands, signify now. 57% voted no. The chamber erupted in noise, but the decision was made. Humanity would not surrender. Ambassador Hannah was chosen to draft the response. She sat at her desk for an hour, considering elaborate diplomatic language, careful phrasing, measured words. Then, she deleted it all and typed 2 words. Humanity declines. She added one more line. We have heard your ultimatum. We reject it. If you wish to enslave us, you will have to take us by force. We will not go quietly into your cages. Dae-hyun reviewed the message and nodded grimly. Send it on all channels. Make sure every species in the galaxy hears it. The transmission went out at hour 68 of the 72-hour deadline. 4 hours later, sensors detected the first assembly ships arriving at the edge of the solar system. Then, more appeared. And, more. Within an hour, 300 alien vessels had formed a blockade around humanity's home. Arbitrator Keln's voice echoed across every human communication device once more. Your refusal is noted. You have made your choice. Forced compliance will now begin. Surrender peacefully and deaths will be minimized. Resist and face the consequences. Admiral Dae-hyun stood on the command deck of his flagship, looking at the tactical display showing the overwhelming enemy force. All ships, battle stations, he ordered calmly. Prepare for combat operations. Today we show them what humans do when backed into a corner. Captain Jin-woo received the order aboard his frigate. He looked at his crew, seeing fear and determination in their faces. You heard the Admiral, he said. This is it. This is the moment we've been training for. They want us to surrender. They want us to submit. Are we going to do that? No, sir, the crew shouted back. Damn right we're not. Jean Wu allowed himself a fierce smile. Let's show these aliens why you don't threaten humanity. The 72 hours expired. The discussion had ended. Now humanity would respond with fire. The assembly blockade formed a perfect sphere around the solar system, 300 ships positioned with mathematical precision. Each vessel was massive, dwarfing even humanity's largest carriers. They hung in space like silent monuments, their weapons powered but not yet firing. Arbitrator Kelm broadcast the same message every 6 hours. Surrender peacefully. Resistance will result in necessary force. Surrender peacefully. Resistance will result in necessary force. The repetition was deliberate, meant to wear down human resolve through constant psychological pressure. It didn't work. Admiral Daehyun had moved his command to the UES Indomitable, humanity's largest warship. It was barely a tenth the size of the smallest assembly vessel, but it was home now. He stood in a combat information center, surrounded by displays showing every human ship, every defensive station, every weapon platform humanity possessed. 87 warships. Not nearly enough. Status report, he ordered. His tactical officer, Commander Borum, read from her screen. All fleet elements have reported ready status. Colonial reinforcements are en route but won't arrive for another 40 hours. Mars defense grid is at full power. Luna shipyards have been evacuated and converted to weapons platforms. And our friends out there? No change. They maintain position at the heliopause. No hostile actions yet. They're just waiting. Daehyun nodded slowly. Waiting was its own kind of warfare. Every hour that passed drained resources, frayed nerves, and tested resolve. The assembly had time. They could wait months if needed, knowing humanity would eventually crack under the pressure. Or so they thought. Get me Dr. Minji on Mars, Daehyun said. I want to know if she's found anything we can use. On Mars, Dr. Minji hadn't slept in 50 hours. The Research Institute's main lab looked like a war zone, covered in scattered notes, half-eaten meals, and empty coffee containers. She was hunched over a holographic display showing the internal structure of an assembly ship, information gathered from long-range scans and intelligence reports. There, she muttered, highlighting a section. That's the network node. That's where they link together. Her team of 6 researchers gathered around her. They all looked as exhausted as she did. Explain it again, one of them said. Slowly. Minji took a breath. The assembly species don't think like us. Most of them have some form of collective consciousness or neural linking. When they operate ships together, they connect their minds through quantum entanglement. It makes them incredibly coordinated. 300 ships moving like one organism. That sounds unbeatable. It is, in conventional warfare. But, it's also a vulnerability. If we can disrupt that connection, if we can sever the neural link. She gestured at the hologram. The entire fleet could go dark at once. Ships would be isolated, confused, unable to coordinate. How do we disrupt it? Minji pulled up another screen showing complex equations. Quantum disruptor. We've had the theoretical framework for years but never built one. It would generate a cascade of interference patterns across the quantum field. Any ship using quantum entanglement for communication would experience catastrophic feedback. Could we build it? In time? Yes. In the time we have? Minji looked at the countdown timer on the wall. I don't know. But, I'm going to try. She opened a comm channel to Admiral Daehyun and explained her theory. The Admiral listened carefully. How long to build a prototype, he asked. 60 hours minimum. Maybe 70. And, that's working non-stop with full resources. You have whatever you need. Get it done, Doctor. It might be our only chance. While Minji and her team raced against time, Captain Jinwoo was coordinating a different kind of preparation. His frigate, the UES Defiant, had become a rallying point for the younger officers in the fleet. They met in the ship's briefing room, studying everything humanity knew about assembly tactics. They haven't fought a real war in over 1,000 years, Jinwoo said, displaying historical records. Every conflict in that time has been what they call pacification missions. A superior force arrives, the target species surrenders, and it's over in days. So they're rusty, suggested Lieutenant Hyojin, his weapons officer. More than rusty. They've forgotten how to fight an enemy that fights back. Look at these battle records. They always use the same formations, the same approach patterns. They're predictable. Predictable doesn't help when they outgun us 10-1. Jinwoo smiled grimly. No, but it helps us survive long enough to hurt them. And, if we can hurt them, if we can show the galaxy that humanity doesn't roll over and die, maybe others will find the courage to stand up too. The first test of that theory came 30 hours into the standoff. Assembly scout ships, smaller vessels about the size of human corvettes, began probing Earth's defensive perimeter. They moved in groups of 3, scanning defenses and testing response times. Jinwoo's squadron was on patrol near the asteroid belt when they detected one such probe group. Weapons hold, Jinwoo ordered. Let them get closer. Make them think we're afraid to engage. The assembly scouts moved deeper into the solar system, their scans sweeping across human positions. They were arrogant, casual, as if surveying an already conquered territory. Range optimal, Hyojin reported. Target lock acquired on all 3. Fire. The Defiance railgun spoke first, magnetic accelerators hurling tungsten rounds at a significant fraction of light speed. 2 human frigates flanking Jinwoo's position opened fire simultaneously. The ambush was perfect. 2 assembly scouts exploded immediately, their shields unable to handle the kinetic impact. The third managed to raise defenses but took critical damage. It tried to retreat, limping back toward the blockade line. Finish it, Jinwoo ordered. Missiles streaked across the dark, and the third scout died in a silent flash of light. All ships, fall back to secondary positions, Jinwoo commanded. Don't let them track us. The 3 frigates scattered into the asteroid field, disappearing among the rocks and ice. The news of the engagement spread through the human fleet like electricity. 3 assembly ships destroyed. No human losses. It wasn't much, but it was something. It was proof that the aliens could bleed. It also made the assembly angry. Arbitrator Keln's next broadcast dropped all pretense of patience. You have killed assembly personnel. This act of violence confirms your dangerous nature. You will be subdued. Compliance is no longer optional. Admiral Daehyun watched the transmission and allowed himself a cold smile. Good. Let them be angry. Angry enemies make mistakes. Ambassador Hannah, still on Earth, received an unexpected message through back channels. It was from a species called the Kresh, insectoid beings with compound eyes and chitinous exoskeletons. They were minor members of the assembly, rarely speaking in council sessions. The message was simple. The Velthrans who lead the assembly are afraid of you. They see in humans what they have suppressed in themselves. Not all agree with this action. Some of us remember what freedom felt like. Hannah stared at the message for a long time. It wasn't an offer of help. It wasn't an alliance. But it was a crack in the assembly's unity. And cracks could be exploited. She sent back a single line. Freedom is always worth fighting for. On Mars, Dr. Minji's team worked without stopping. The quantum disruptor was taking shape, a complex array of quantum processors and field generators. It looked like a metal flower with crystalline petals, beautiful and deadly. "Will it work?" asked her lead technician. "Theoretically, yes. Practically?" Minji rubbed her tired eyes. "We won't know until we use it. And we'll only get one shot. If it fails, the assembly will adapt their systems and we'll never get another chance. So no pressure." Minji laughed despite the situation. "None at all. Just the fate of our entire species resting on whether my math is correct." The standoff continued. More assembly scouts probed human defenses, and more died in carefully planned ambushes. Jinwoo's tactics were being copied by other squadron commanders. Hit fast, hit hard, disappear before the enemy can respond. The assembly lost 37 ships in these skirmishes over 5 days. Not enough to break the blockade, but enough to frustrate them. Enough to make them reconsider their assumptions about human weakness. Admiral Daehyun knew it couldn't last. Eventually, the assembly would stop probing and start attacking in force. When that happened, the real war would begin. He called a meeting of all senior officers, appearing to them through holographic projection. "The assembly is losing patience," he said without preamble. "Intelligence suggests they're preparing for a major assault, probably targeting Luna's shipyards. Dr. Minji is completing a weapon that might turn the tide, but she needs more time. Our job is to buy her that time." "How?" asked one of the carrier captains. "By making them pay for every meter of space they take. By fighting so hard they'll think twice about pushing deeper into our system. By showing them that conquering humanity costs more than they're willing to spend." "Admiral," another officer said quietly, "most of us won't survive this." Daehyun met his eyes steadily. "I know. But our children will. And they'll grow up free because we chose to fight rather than kneel. That's the legacy we leave." The meeting ended. Officers returned to their ships. Crews prepared for battle. And, at the edge of the solar system, the assembly fleet began to move. The assembly fleet moved with terrible purpose. 100 ships detached from the blockade formation and began their approach toward Luna, Earth's moon. Their target was clear: the massive shipyards orbiting the lunar surface, humanity's primary construction facility for military vessels. Admiral Daehyun watched them come on his tactical display. "Right on schedule," he murmured. "Predictable, just like the captain said." Commander Borum looked at him. "Sir, we're outnumbered 5-1 just in this sector. If they break through, they won't break through easily," Daehyun interrupted. "Execute Operation Hornet's Nest." What the assembly fleet didn't know was that humanity had spent the past week preparing Luna's space for this exact assault. The orbital paths around the moon had been seeded with thousands of stealth mines, each one programmed to recognize assembly ship signatures. Hidden defense platforms, powered down and disguised as debris, floated in carefully calculated positions. It was a trap, and the assembly fleet flew straight into it. The first assembly ship crossed the trigger line. Instantly, space erupted in violence. Mines detonated in cascading chains, their shaped charges designed to penetrate shields at close range. Defense platforms powered up and opened fire, railguns and missiles launching in coordinated volleys. 15 assembly ships died in the first 90 seconds. The remaining vessels scattered, their perfect formation breaking as captains tried desperately to avoid the continuing explosions. Some collided with each other in the chaos. Others fired wildly, hitting their own ships as often as hitting the mines. "Now," Daehyun ordered. "All ships, attack." 20 human warships that had been hiding in Luna's shadow burst forward, their weapons blazing. They focused fire on the already damaged assembly vessels, overwhelming shields and punching through hulls. Captain Jinwoo led the assault in the Defiant, his frigate dancing between larger ships like a fighter craft. "Target their communication arrays," he shouted. Blind them, isolate them. His weapons officer, Hyojin, grinned fiercely as she fired. 3 hits, 4 hits, their antenna array is down. The assembly fleet was reeling. They had expected an easy battle, overwhelming human defenses through sheer numbers. Instead, they were bleeding ships faster than they could coordinate a response. But, the assembly had one advantage: they learned quickly. After losing 40 ships, the remaining vessels pulled back beyond the minefield's range. They regrouped, their formations tighter now, more defensive. Then, they advanced again, but, differently this time. They sent wave after wave of drones ahead, clearing mines with acceptable losses before the main fleet followed. They've adapted, Borum reported grimly. The trap won't work twice. Daehyun nodded. He'd expected this. Fall back to Luna orbit. Make them fight for every kilometer. The battle shifted. Assembly ships pushed forward methodically, absorbing losses but, advancing steadily. Human ships fought a running battle, hitting hard and, retreating before they could be overwhelmed. The moon's surface installations added their firepower, massive defense cannons firing up at the descending fleet. It became a brutal exchange. Assembly ships fell, but, so did human vessels. The UES Resolute took a direct hit and, broke apart, its crew of 200 dying in seconds. The carrier Vigilant lost its engines and, had to be abandoned. Frigate after frigate disappeared in flashes of light and, scattered debris. But, humanity made the assembly pay. For every human ship lost, 2 or 3 assembly vessels died. The cost was becoming impossible to ignore. On Mars, Dr. Minji was putting the final touches on her quantum disruptor. Her hands shook from exhaustion and, stimulants, but, they remained steady enough for the delicate work. Final calibrations complete, she announced. The weapon is ready. Her team gathered around, looking at the device with a mixture of hope and, fear. How do we deploy it? Asked her lead technician. It needs to be within 500 kilometers of an assembly ship to work, preferably their command vessel. That's suicide range. Minji had already considered this. I'll take it myself. Load it on a fast transport, and, I'll fly it into their formation. You're the only one who understands the device. If you die, then, it doesn't matter if I've shared the knowledge or not, because we'll all be dead anyway. Minji's voice was calm. This is the only way. She contacted Admiral Daehyun and, explained the deployment requirement. There was a long pause on the comm line. No, Daehyun said finally. You're too valuable, Doctor. Captain Jin-woo will transport the device. His ship is fast and, his crew is experienced with suicide runs. Admiral, I need to operate the disruptor personally. The timing has to be exact, then, you'll operate it from Jinwoo's ship. That's final. Get to the Defiance position immediately. Minji wanted to argue but, recognized the tone in his voice. She gathered her equipment and, took a shuttle up from Mars. The battle for Luna was reaching a critical point. Assembly ships had fought their way to the moon's orbital shipyards. Human defenders made them pay for every meter, but, the outcome was inevitable. One by one, the orbital facilities fell. Construction docks exploded under heavy fire. Repair stations were torn apart. Admiral Daehyun watched Luna's defenses crumble and, felt a cold fury in his chest. All remaining Luna forces, fall back to Earth orbit. We've bought enough time. Captain Jinwoo's Defiant was damaged but, still operational. Half his crew was injured, including Hyojin who had burns across her left arm but, refused to leave her post. When he received orders to rendezvous with Dr. Minji's shuttle, he was confused. What's the mission? He asked. Admiral Daehyun's face appeared on his screen. You're going to carry a weapon into the heart of their fleet and, deploy it. The weapon will disable every assembly ship simultaneously. But, you have to get close to their command vessel. How close? 500 kilometers. Jin Woo looked at his tactical display. The assembly command ship, a massive cathedral-like vessel, was surrounded by dozens of escorts. Getting within 500 kilometers meant flying through concentrated fire that would tear his frigate apart. Understood, sir. We'll get it done. Captain, this is a one-way mission. You understand that? Jin Woo thought of his crew, thought of Earth below, thought of every human who would live in chains if they failed. Yes, sir. We understand. Dr. Minji boarded the Defiant 30 minutes later, bringing the quantum disruptor and 3 technicians to help install it. Jin Woo greeted her in the cargo bay. Welcome aboard, Doctor. I hope that thing of yours works. Minji looked at the young captain and saw determination in his eyes. So do I, Captain. For all our sakes. They installed the disruptor in the Defiant's forward bay, connecting it to the ship's power systems. Minji ran diagnostics while Jin Woo assembled his squadron. 20 ships volunteered to escort the Defiant on its run. They all knew it was suicide, and they all came anyway. Listen up, Jin Woo addressed his squadron over comm. Our mission is simple. Get Dr. Minji to firing range of that command ship. We don't have to survive. We just have to get her there. Understood? 20 captains acknowledged. No one hesitated. No one questioned. Then, let's end this war. The squadron formed up and accelerated toward the assembly fleet. They had been battered ships before, but now they pushed their damaged engines to maximum, racing toward the enemy at speeds that would have terrified any sane crew. The assembly fleet detected them immediately. Escorts moved to intercept. Weapons fire filled space with deadly light. The first human ship, the corvette Steadfast, took a direct hit and vaporized. Then, the frigate Courageous. Then, the destroyer Relentless. One by one, Jinwoo's escorts died, trading their lives for every kilometer gained. Shields at 30%, Hyojin reported through gritted teeth. Hull breaches on decks 3 and 5. Engine straining. Keep going, Jin Woo ordered. We're not stopping. 8 ships left. 6. 4. The Defiant's shields collapsed entirely. Energy weapons scored deep gouges in the hull. Atmosphere vented from a dozen breaches. The engineering section reported reactor instability. But, they were close now. 3,000 kilometers. 2,000. 1,000. Doctor. Jin Woo shouted. Now or never. In the forward bay, Minji activated the quantum disruptor. The device hummed with building power, its crystalline components beginning to glow. The calculations had to be perfect. The timing had to be exact. She thought of Earth. She thought of her parents in Seoul who would never know what she'd done. She thought of every human who would live free because of this moment. Firing, she said calmly, and triggered the disruptor. The effect was instantaneous and catastrophic. A wave of quantum interference exploded outward from the Defiant, invisible to human senses but devastating to the assembly's Neuralink network. Every ship using quantum entanglement for coordination felt the feedback simultaneously. 300 assembly vessels went dark at once. Their shields collapsed. Their weapons stopped firing. Their crews, minds suddenly, severed from the collective network, screamed in confusion and pain. The Defiant's reactor, already unstable, couldn't handle the power drain. It began to fail. Abandon ship. Jin Woo ordered. Everyone to escape pods now. But, even as his crew evacuated, he stayed at the helm. Someone had to keep the ship steady long enough for the disruptor to complete its work. Someone had to make sure they'd gotten close enough. Dr. Minji reached the escape pod bay and looked back. Captain. Come on. Jean Wu smiled at her through the smoke filling his bridge. Someone has to fly this boat, Doctor. Get our people home. Tell them we did it. The reactor reached critical. Jean Wu had 5 seconds to regret nothing before the Defiant exploded in a ball of fusion fire. And, across the solar system, Admiral Daehyun saw 300 assembly ships floating dead in space. All vessels, he said quietly. Attack. Show no mercy. The slaughter lasted 4 hours. Human ships fell upon the disabled assembly fleet like wolves on wounded prey. 300 vessels that had come to subjugate humanity became 300 floating coffins. The ships that tried to restart their systems were destroyed before they could recover. The ships that managed to raise shields died anyway under concentrated fire. When it was over, humanity's fleet was reduced to 34 operational warships. But, the assembly blockade was annihilated. Not a single enemy vessel escaped. Admiral Daehyun stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, looking at the debris field that stretched across millions of kilometers. Bodies floated among the wreckage, crystalline beings and, insectoid forms and, creatures humanity had never seen before, all dead now. He felt no satisfaction, only grim necessity. Broadcast this on all frequencies, he ordered. Let every species in the galaxy see what happened here. The footage went out within minutes. Video of the battle, of the assembly fleet's destruction, of humanity's refusal to surrender. It spread through alien communication networks like wildfire, reaching hundreds of worlds within hours. The Galactic Assembly's chambers on their homeworld erupted in chaos. The Velthran leadership who had ordered the subjugation of humanity now faced a storm of questions and accusations from the other member species. You told us this would be simple, hissed a Kresh representative, its compound eyes reflecting anger. You said the humans would submit like all the others. 300 ships are gone. 300 crews dead. How do you explain this failure? Supreme Arbitrator Kelm's crystalline form flickered with defensive colors. The humans fought with unexpected ferocity. They used tactics we did not anticipate. They deployed a weapon that disrupted our coordination. This does not change the fundamental situation. They must still be contained. At what cost? Demanded a Delphin delegate, its aquatic body rippling in agitation. How many more ships will you throw away? How many more of our people will die for your pride? This is not pride, Kelm insisted. This is necessity. Humanity is dangerous. They have proven this by destroying our fleet. They cannot be allowed to spread further. But, doubt had entered the assembly. For the first time in 1,000 years, member species were questioning the Velthran leadership. Quiet conversations happened in corridors. Secret communications passed between worlds. On Earth, Ambassador Hannah received delegations from 3 species who had voted against the human subjugation. They came in secret, their ships appearing in isolated locations away from public observation. The Kresh ambassador was first, a being with 6 legs and mandibles that clicked nervously. My government does not officially recognize this meeting, it said carefully. But, there are those among my people who remember when we were free, before the assembly absorbed us. What do you want? Hannah asked directly. Information. How did you disable our fleet? What weapon did you use? Hannah considered lying but decided on honesty. A quantum disruptor. It severs neural link connections. And, before you ask, no, we won't share the technology. It's the only advantage we have. The Kresh clicked its mandibles in what might have been approval. We understand. We also understand that the assembly will not stop. They cannot allow your victory to stand. They will send more ships. We know. We're preparing. Then, you should know this. The Kresh leaned forward. The assembly leadership is authorizing the purge fleet. 12 dreadnoughts, each carrying planet-killer weapons. They will not try to subjugate you again. They will simply erase you. Hannah felt ice in her stomach. When? 10 days. Maybe less. After the creche left, Hannah immediately contacted Admiral Daehyun and relayed the information. The Admiral listened in silence, then cursed softly. Dreadnoughts. We barely survived regular warships. How are we supposed to fight vessels designed to crack planets? We find a way, Hannah said firmly. We always find a way. That's what being human means. Daehyun managed a tired smile. You sound like Captain Jinwoo. He would have said the same thing. They both fell silent, thinking of the young captain who had sacrificed himself for humanity's survival. His name was already being spoken with reverence across Earth and the colonies. He had become humanity's first hero of the war. But there would need to be many more heroes before this was over. Dr. Minji had survived the Defiant's destruction, rescued from her escape pod by a human destroyer. She was back on Mars now, exhausted but already working. If humanity was to face dreadnoughts, they needed better weapons. We can mass-produce the disruptors, she told her team. Every ship can carry one. But the assembly will be prepared this time. They'll have shielding against quantum interference. So what do we do? Minji pulled up schematics of the dreadnoughts, information provided by their new creche contact. We study these monsters and find their weaknesses. Even planet killers have vulnerabilities. Across human space, total mobilization began. Every shipyard worked around the clock. Every factory converted to war production. Mining operations in the asteroid belt extracted resources at unprecedented rates. Civilian vessels were retrofitted with weapons. And the colonies sent everything they had. Ships that had been scheduled for retirement were pulled out of mothballs and armed. Merchant vessels became troop transports. Even pleasure yachts were converted into missile boats. The volunteer fleet grew daily. Thousands of ships, most of them barely military grade, but all of them crewed by humans who refused to surrender. Commodore Hyojin, promoted after surviving the Battle of Luna, took command of the volunteer coordination. She worked from a makeshift operations center on Earth's orbital ring, trying to organize the chaos into something resembling a fighting force. Most of these ships have no armor, she told Admiral Daehyun during a briefing. No shields. They're basically armed cargo haulers. If they get hit, they'll die. They know that, Daehyun replied. They're volunteering anyway. We need every ship, Commodore. When those dreadnoughts arrive, we throw everything we have at them or we die as a species. Hyojin nodded grimly. Then, I'll make sure they die making a difference. Ambassador Hannah made a bold decision. She recorded a broadcast and sent it not just to human space but to every known alien species in the galaxy. My name is Hannah. I represent humanity. 10 days ago, the Galactic Assembly demanded our surrender. They wanted to put us in cages, to control us, to breed the freedom out of our children. We said no. They sent 300 ships to force our compliance. We destroyed them all. She paused, letting that sink in across countless alien worlds. Now they're sending more. They're sending dreadnoughts with planet-killer weapons because they cannot accept that we refuse to submit. They want to exterminate us as a lesson to anyone else who might think about freedom. But, here's what they don't understand. Humanity doesn't surrender. We don't kneel. We don't give up. Another pause. I'm broadcasting this to every species in the galaxy because you need to understand what's about to happen here. The Assembly tells you they maintain peace. They tell you their rule is necessary. But, look at what they do when someone says no. They don't negotiate. They don't compromise. They exterminate. They're about to try to commit genocide against an entire species whose only crime was wanting to be free. Hannah's voice hardened. So watch what happens. Watch as humanity fights for survival. And, when you see the lengths we'll go to for freedom, ask yourselves if you're really free under assembly rule, or if you're just slaves who've forgotten what chains feel like. The broadcast ended. Within hours, it had been viewed by billions across the galaxy. Some species denounced it as propaganda. Others began having uncomfortable conversations about the assembly's methods. 3 more species sent secret delegations to Hannah, offering information about assembly weaknesses. None would commit to open alliance, but the cracks in the assembly's unity were spreading. Admiral Daehyun received reports on the preparations. The fleet was as ready as it would ever be. Dr. Minji had produced 47 quantum disruptors, installed on the largest surviving warships. Every defensive position around Earth was armed. Every ship had a crew willing to die. He recorded his own message, but this one was only for humanity. In 10 days, maybe less, 12 dreadnoughts will arrive at our home. These ships are designed to destroy planets. They carry enough firepower to turn Earth into a dead rock. The assembly sends them because they want to make an example of us. They want to show the galaxy what happens when you defy their authority. Daehyun looked directly into the camera. Let them come. Let them bring their dreadnoughts and their planet killers. We'll show them what happens when you threaten humanity's home. We'll show them that some things are worth dying for. And we'll make sure that if Earth falls, the assembly pays a price they'll never forget. He ended the recording and looked at Commander Borum. How much time do we have? Long-range sensors detect a quantum wake forming at the edge of the system. Whatever's coming, it's big and it's coming fast. I'd say 6 hours, maybe 8. Sooner than expected. They want to catch us unprepared. Daehyun smiled coldly. Then, they're in for a surprise. Sound general quarters. All ships to battle stations. This is it. This is where we make our stand. Across the solar system, alarms blared. Ships moved into position. Crews checked weapons one final time. Civilians were evacuated to bunkers deep underground. Parents held their children and tried not to show fear. And, at the edge of known space, 12 massive dreadnoughts emerged from hyperspace, their weapons already charging, their intent absolute. The Purge fleet had arrived. The 12 dreadnoughts were nightmares made metal. Each one was 5 kilometers long, bristling with weapons that could shatter continents. They moved through space with terrible purpose, ignoring everything except their target. Earth hung in the distance, blue and green and alive. Soon, if the assembly had its way, it would be nothing but ash. Arbitrator Kelm commanded the assault from the lead dreadnought. He had been humiliated by humanity's earlier victory. This time there would be no mistakes, no clever tactics, no surprising weapons. The dreadnoughts would simply advance and destroy everything in their path. He didn't bother broadcasting surrender demands. Humanity had made its choice. Now they would face the consequences. Admiral Daehyun watched the enemy fleet approach on his tactical display. Around Earth, humanity's final defense force waited. 34 warships that had survived the previous battle. 270 volunteer vessels, ranging from converted cargo haulers to ancient patrol boats pulled from museums. Every orbital station and satellite armed with whatever weapons could be mounted. Against 12 dreadnoughts designed to kill planets. The math was impossible. But, humans had never been good at accepting mathematical certainty. First wave, launch, Daehyun ordered calmly. 50 volunteer ships accelerated toward the approaching dreadnoughts. They were suicide ships, crews of 10 or less, their only purpose to get close and detonate. Each carried nuclear warheads, antimatter charges, or simply full fuel tanks meant to explode on impact. The dreadnought's point defense systems activated, filling space with interceptor fire. Volunteer ships began dying immediately, blown apart before they could close. But, there were so many of them, coming from so many angles, that some got through. The first volunteer ship, a converted mining tug called Simple Fortune, crashed into a dreadnought's forward section. The nuclear warhead it carried detonated against shields, causing barely a flicker. But, it created a moment of distraction. 2 more ships followed, then 5 more, then 10. Explosions blossomed against the dreadnought's shields like flowers of fire. Most did negligible damage, but they forced the massive ships to slow their advance, to divert power to defenses. Second wave, engage, Daehyun ordered. Commodore Hyojin led a squadron of 20 frigates and destroyers in a high-speed attack run. They had learned from the Battle of Luna. Don't engage directly. Hit the weak points. Move before they can target you properly. Her ship streaked past the dreadnoughts, firing everything they had at shield generators and weapon ports. It was like attacking mountains with knives, but knives could cut if used precisely enough. One dreadnought took damage to its starboard shield emitter. The shield flickered and failed on that side. Immediately, human weapons concentrated fire on the exposed section. Armor plating cracked. Hull breaches appeared. But, the dreadnought's escorts responded. 50 assembly cruisers and destroyers, protecting the massive vessels, turned their weapons on Hyojin's squadron. 5 human ships died in seconds. 8 more took critical damage. All ships, scatter, Hyojin ordered. Regroup at fallback point Delta. The dreadnoughts continued their advance, barely slowed. One had taken damage but remained combat effective. The others were untouched. They were still 8 million kilometers from Earth, but, at their current speed, they would reach firing range in 4 hours. On Mars, Dr. Minji was aboard the heavy cruiser Determination with her quantum disruptor. But, she knew from the previous battle that the assembly would have adapted. They'd have shielding, backup systems, redundancies. We need to get creative, she told the cruiser's captain. The disruptors alone won't be enough. She had an idea, dangerous and, probably insane. Can we overload the disruptor? Pump it full of power beyond its design specs. It would explode. Exactly. But, if we detonate it right next to a dreadnought, the quantum cascade would be massive. It might punch through their shielding. The captain stared at her. That would destroy our ship. Yes. But, it would also destroy the dreadnought. One of ours for one of theirs. That's better odds than we've had so far. Word of Minji's plan spread through the fleet. 47 ships carried disruptors. If each could take out a dreadnought through suicide runs, they'd destroy far more than 12. But, before anyone could volunteer, Admiral Daehyun spoke on the command frequency. No suicide runs yet. We save that option for when nothing else works. Right now, we fight smart. He had been studying the dreadnought's approach pattern and noticed something. They moved in a tight formation, overlapping shields for maximum protection. Smart tactically, but it meant they were close together. Very close together. What if we don't try to destroy them individually? Daehyun said slowly. What if we make them destroy each other? He outlined his plan quickly. It was insane, almost impossible, but no more impossible than anything else they'd attempted. The third wave launched. 100 volunteer ships, each carrying reflective chaff and decoy drones. They swarmed the dreadnoughts from all directions, deploying their payloads and filling space with false sensor readings. The dreadnought's targeting system struggled to track so many small contacts. They fired wildly, hitting decoys and chaff. More importantly, with targets all around them, their overlapping shields became a liability. Energy weapons meant for human ships instead struck other dreadnoughts' shields. It wasn't enough to cause serious damage, but it created confusion and forced the dreadnoughts to spread out slightly. That's when the real attack came. 20 human warships, led by Commodore Hyugen's damaged destroyer, accelerated to maximum speed and dove straight through the gap that had opened in the dreadnought formation. They fired every weapon they had as they passed, not at the dreadnoughts themselves but at the escort vessels protecting them. 8 assembly escorts died. More were damaged and fell out of formation. The dreadnoughts, frustrated by the small ships constantly harassing them, made their first mistake. 3 of them broke formation to pursue Hyugen's squadron, trying to swat the annoying human vessels. Admiral Daehyun saw his opening. All ships with disruptors, target those 3 dreadnoughts. Concentrated fire. Do it now. 12 human ships converged on the isolated dreadnoughts from different vectors. They activated their quantum disruptors simultaneously, creating overlapping fields of interference. The 3 dreadnoughts' shields collapsed. Their weapon systems went offline. And, for 30 crucial seconds, they were vulnerable. Human weapons spoke with savage fury. Railguns, missiles, particle beams, everything humanity had built over decades of military development. The 3 dreadnoughts, suddenly, defenseless, took catastrophic damage. One exploded from a reactor breach. The second lost propulsion and began tumbling. The third managed to restore partial shields but was crippled, listing badly and venting atmosphere. 9 dreadnoughts remained, but now they were angry and cautious in equal measure. They tightened formation again and slowed their advance, assessing the unexpected resistance. Arbitrator Keln stared at his tactical display in disbelief. How were these primitives doing this? How were they hurting ships designed to be invincible? He opened communications to the other dreadnought commanders. Change of tactics. Ignore their ships. Go straight for the planet. 1 shot from each dreadnought will be sufficient. The remaining dreadnoughts shifted course, accelerating hard toward Earth and ignoring the human fleet entirely. If they couldn't swat every mosquito, they'd simply accomplish their mission and leave. But Keln had forgotten that wounded animals fight hardest when protecting their home. Admiral Daehyun saw the dreadnought's new course and knew what it meant. They were going to start shooting at Earth directly. Once those planet-killer weapons fired, nothing would stop them. Shields couldn't protect a planet. All the tactics and clever strategies in the world wouldn't matter. He made his decision. All ships, he said quietly. This is Admiral Daehyun. The enemy is targeting Earth directly. We can't stop their weapons from here. So we're going to stop them from firing. He paused. Every ship with me. We're going straight down their throats. It was suicide and everyone knew it. But every ship, from massive cruisers to tiny volunteer craft, turned toward the dreadnoughts and accelerated. 294 human vessels against 9 dreadnoughts and their remaining escorts. The space between them disappeared fast. Assembly weapons filled the void with fire. Human ships died by the dozen, but the rest kept coming, kept firing, kept fighting. Daehyun's flagship, the Indomitable, took direct hits from 2 dreadnoughts. Shields failed. Hull breaches appeared across multiple decks. The bridge caught fire and half the command crew died instantly. But Daehyun was still alive, still at his post. Blood ran down his face from a head wound. He could barely see through the smoke. All power to engines, he ordered. Ram them. Ram them all. The Indomitable accelerated one final time, directly toward the nearest dreadnought. The massive enemy ship tried to evade but was too slow, too unwieldy. The 2 ships collided at relativistic speeds. The impact was catastrophic. The Indomitable vaporized instantly, but its momentum carried fragments into the dreadnought's main weapon port just as it was charging for a planetary bombardment shot. The dreadnought exploded from within, its planet-killer weapon detonating inside its own hull. The explosion was so massive it damaged 2 neighboring dreadnoughts. 7 dreadnoughts left. Dr. Minji, watching from the determination, made her decision. "Captain, implement my overload plan. Target that dreadnought." She pointed at the largest remaining vessel, the one carrying Arbitrator Keln. "Doctor, do it. Admiral Daehyun just gave his life. I can do no less." The captain nodded slowly. His crew prepared the ship for its final mission. The determination accelerated toward Keln's dreadnought. Assembly fire tore into it, ripping away sections of hull. The engines were hit and failed. Life support went offline. But Minji had already activated the overloaded disruptor. The device was screaming with barely contained energy, its crystalline matrix fracturing from the strain. They were 3,000 kilometers away. 2,000. 1,000. Minji thought of Earth, of humanity, of all the people who would live because of this moment. For everyone who ever dreamed of freedom, she whispered, and detonated the disruptor. The quantum cascade was unprecedented, orders of magnitude larger than any previous discharge. It didn't just disrupt the dreadnought systems. It tore through dimensional barriers, created temporary singularities, and released energy equivalent to a supernova compressed into a single point. Arbitrator Keln had 1 second to realize what was happening before his dreadnought, and, for others caught in the blast radius, simply ceased to exist. They didn't explode. They didn't break apart. They were unmade, converted to their component atoms and scattered across space. 2 dreadnoughts remained. The human fleet, now reduced to 53 ships, surrounded them like wolves circling wounded prey. The dreadnoughts tried to run, their mission failed, but there was nowhere to go. Commodore Hyojin, her destroyer barely holding together, led the final assault. For Admiral Daehyun. For Dr. Minji. For Captain Jin-woo. For everyone we've lost. The last 2 dreadnoughts died under overwhelming fire, their crews given no mercy because they had come to give none. When silence finally fell, Hyojin looked at what remained of humanity's fleet. 53 ships out of nearly 300. Every vessel damaged. Every crew exhausted. But Earth still turned below them, blue and alive and free. On Earth, the people emerged from their bunkers and looked up at the debris falling like meteor showers across the sky. The remains of the Purge fleet, burning up in atmosphere. They had survived. Humanity had survived. Ambassador Hannah stood at her window in Geneva, watching the sky. Her comm device chimed with incoming messages from across the galaxy. Dozens of species, some small, some powerful, all with the same message. The assembly was finished. Species were declaring independence. The old order was collapsing. And it had started with humanity's refusal to kneel. 6 months later, Hannah addressed a new galactic council, one formed from the ashes of the assembly's tyranny. 16 species now governed cooperatively, with humanity holding an equal seat. We did not want war, she said to the assembled delegates. We wanted peace. But we would not buy peace with slavery. The assembly demanded our surrender. We showed them the price of that demand. She looked around at species who had lived under assembly rule for generations, now experiencing freedom for the first time. This galaxy has a choice now. We can build a community based on cooperation and mutual respect. Or we can repeat the mistakes of the past. Humanity will defend freedom wherever it's threatened. We proved that with fire and blood. Let's hope we never have to prove it again. At Luna, now rebuilt, Commodore Hyojin oversaw construction of a memorial. Names were carved into black stone. Admiral Dae-hyun, Dr. Minji, Captain Jin-woo. Thousands more. A young officer, newly promoted, approached Hyojin. Her name was Sujin, and she had been one of Jinwoo's original crew aboard the Defiant. "Ma'am, was it worth it?" Sujin asked, looking at all those names. "All these people dead?" Hyojin considered the question carefully. She looked at Earth below, at the new ships being built bearing the insignia of a dozen species united by choice rather than force. "They demanded surrender," she said finally. "We gave them fire instead. Because of that, every person on Earth lives free. Every child grows up knowing their species never knelt. Every alien species in this galaxy now knows that freedom has power. Was it worth it?" She met Sujin's eyes. "Ask any of the names on that wall. They'd all say yes." The memorial stood silent, a monument to defiance. Above it, stars wheeled in their eternal dance. And, among those stars, humanity spread not as conquerors but, as free people, carrying with them the lesson learned in fire. Some things are worth fighting for. Some things are worth dying for. And, freedom is worth both.